Hello there, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Here's what we're looking at.
We can make history.
Governor J.B. Pritzker lays out his vision for what's next in Illinois. Critics say it's too costly.
I know you don't know Black Chicago that well. And
I live on the west side, Mayor. I live on the west side.
Oof, the gloves come off at the last mayoral debate. Our Spotlight Politics team looks at why.
Well, community members think about a watchdog report that says city officials could have prevented that botched smokestack implosion in Little Village.
We have never had our own building since I've been living here in this neighborhood for over 30 years. We need to get it right.
And why a group of residents are fighting against sharing a library with a new development in the Back of the Yards neighborhood. And now to some of today's top stories. The father of the suspected Highland Park shooter is now also facing charges related to that 4th of July shooting that killed 7 people. The Lake County State's Attorney's Office says a grand jury has indicted 58-year-old Robert Cremo Jr. with 7 counts of reckless conduct, 1 for each person killed. Prosecutors say he helped his son obtain a gun license back when the son was 19 years old, even though he'd previously threatened violence. The father is expected to be arraigned tomorrow. Separately today, the city of Highland Park announced 4th of July plans for this coming summer, including a 10 a.m. remembrance ceremony at City Hall and an 11 a.m. community walk, not a parade, along the 2022 parade route.
Another step on the way to the Bears moving to Arlington Heights. The team says it's officially closed on the property formerly known as Arlington Park Racetrack for just under $200 million. The Bears say that doesn't guarantee it's going to build a new stadium on the property, as several hurdles remain, but it is a giant step forward and a blow to Mayor Lightfoot and any prospects the city has at keeping the team at Soldier Field. Nonetheless, the mayor's office issued a statement today saying the announcement was, quote, anticipated, and that it's an even better opportunity to sell the Bears on the benefits of staying put.
Paying bills and saving money are 2 of the top concerns for Chicagoans participating in the city's Guaranteed Income Pilot program. That's according to research from the University of Chicago's Inclusive Economy Lab, which has partnered with the city of Chicago to study the effectiveness of the $500 a month payment to 5,000 Chicagoans. Additionally, the report shows 27% of respondents reported poor physical health for 3 weeks of the last month at the time of the survey. 33% reported poor mental health, which researchers say is higher than the general adult population under 250% of the federal poverty level. Respondents also say priorities include finding a new place to live and finding a new job. Researchers say this report is intended to be a first look at the program to help stakeholders better understand participants' needs. The program began in April of last year.
Hollywood legend Raquel Welch has died. Welch was born right here in Chicago in 1940 as Jo Raquel Tejada. She moved with her family to Southern California at the age of 2 before eventually launching a prolific movie career that included classic films like Fantastic Voyage and 1 Million Years BC. Welch was also internationally renowned as a sex symbol and had a successful career as an entrepreneur. Welch was 82 years old.
Coming up in the program, our Spotlight Politics team with the latest in the race for Chicago mayor.
That's right, but first, Governor Pritzker delivers his budget address. Amanda Vinicky breaks it down right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Illinois is set to invest more in early childhood through higher education if Governor J.B. Pritzker gets his way. The Democratic governor outlined his new budget in his major annual State of the State speech today. For some, the plan doesn't do enough. Others say it spends too much. Amanda Vinicky joins us now from the state capitol. Amanda, give us the highlights of this budget.
Paris, Governor J.B. Pritzker is actually in a somewhat enviable position. Sure, Illinois still has monster pension debt and COVID grants from the federal government are tapering off. And then, of course, you do have his own forecasters predicting at least a mild recession. Still, Illinois is anticipated to get additional revenue, which means Pritzker's got money to spend.
I'm confident in saying the state of our state is stronger than it has been in decades, and we're getting stronger every day.
No longer does the spending plan include election year one-time tax breaks like a holiday on the gas tax and income tax rebates. Instead, for this next nearly $50 billion general funds budget, Pritzker is pitching more investments in education. Now, especially his new signature program that's called Smart Start, and that is a multi-year, multi-pronged approach that invests more in early childhood, and in its first year would send 5,000 more children to preschool.
Enhancing quality early care and education is a win-win solution for remobilizing parents in the workforce, enhancing brain development and kindergarten readiness, saving taxpayers money, and increasing economic activity now and in the decades ahead.
Still, there is disappointment about where money is not going. Immigrants' rights group want more money, and also you have the Chicago's teacher union saying that at least $400 million more dollars should be going to K through 12 schools, including to CPS. Now, on the opposite side, you have Republicans saying that Pritzker is proposing to spend too much without making any structural changes like those that would ease property taxes.
I am concerned that there are some things in there that we would be committing long-term spending to that we may not have the revenue in the future to fund.
I think the governor really put on an overly rosy demonstration of Illinois. You know, we're seeing residents leave the state. We're seeing businesses, because of high taxes, choose to locate elsewhere.
That faucet from the federal government kind of shutting down, I think we're going to really find ourselves in concerns where we're spending more than we're bringing in. And I'm concerned that we're going to find our way spending ourselves into another tax increase.
Here's guessing that Pritzker's not too worried about those critiques. Democrats have more than enough votes in the legislature to pass a budget without any GOP support. And to wit, Governor Pritzker wrapped up his speech calling out what he described as a virulent strain of nationalism plaguing our nation.
It's an ideological battle by the right wing, hiding behind a claim that they would protect our children, but whose real intention is to marginalize people and ideas they don't like.
As for the budget, Pritzker's pitch is just that, a pitch, and there's a whole lot more to it, so be sure to check out our website for those details. Next come months of negotiations. Paris, back to you.
Yeah, Amanda, and on that CPS bit, you have nearly every candidate for Chicago mayor saying they're going to go to Springfield and ask for more funding from the state for CPS. Never an easy thing to do, but we're going to talk more about this in Spotlight. Thanks very much. And now to Brandis for a look at why some residents are demanding a freestanding library in their community. Brandis.
Right, Paris, there is a fight brewing over a new public library in the back of the Yards neighborhood. Some neighbors are pushing back on a proposal that would incorporate the library into a public housing project. Joanna Hernandez tells us more.
This is where the only library in the back of the Yards neighborhood is located. For the past 10 years, the local library has shared a space with the Back of the Yards College Prep Academy.
I was a youth myself growing up in the neighborhood. Accessibility was a really big thing for me too, because there was that gap between like 2011 and 2013 when I was in high school that there was no library in the community.
Jorge Agustin is one of multiple residents who's been advocating for a freestanding library. Over the years, locals have expressed concerns over the lack of access they have to the current branch. Some residents say the location's lack of amenities, such as parking, has made it difficult for the elderly to use. Others say students are restricted from using the library during school hours.
Ahí estudiaron mis dos hijos y durante sus años de secundaria no tuvieron el privilegio de utilizar su biblioteca como parte de su escuela. Les pedían proyectos o hacían sus tareas en los pasillos, en sus salones o en mi casa.
Consuelo Martinez, along with other parents, formed Luchando por la Biblioteca, fighting for a library. Their efforts secured them $15 million in state funding to help build an independent library. 2 years later, city officials haven't finalized a location.
And now all of a sudden the city's throwing us a curveball. This past summer, they said they're thinking of having a co-location. So once again, they want us to share space.
Jeanette Tapia is talking about a new development coming to 46 in Ashland. The project is set to bring affordable housing, a performing arts theater, and the new headquarters for the Back of the Yards Neighborhood Council. The organization's president, Craig Chico, says co-sharing the space will only benefit the neighborhood.
Some people on the south side of 47th Street won't travel much further beyond the north side of 47th Street to get to a library than this, because unfortunately, and I hate to say it because I'm talking about my own community, it's not necessarily safe. So safety is a number one concern.
Chico says his proposal is a central location for the neighborhood's African American and Latino populations in the neighborhood.
The white is a library, 2 stories, and this is a walkway, so all 4 sides of this library will be independent. They can design it any way they want. They'll have, entry and egress and through any walls that they want. This is Ashland Avenue, so they'll have Ashland exposure. This is their own private deck. So there's going to be all these amenities in all this space. Right now, it's about double the square footage of what exists here at the high school.
But members of Luchando por la Biblioteca say Chico's proposal does not address concerns they have regarding on parking, security, and the library space requirements.
So far, he has only given us a plan that shows a space of under 10,000 feet, and the city promised us that we were going to get 16,000 square feet.
There's been community meetings surrounding the new library. Chico says financially, the proposed location will bring the library faster to the community.
The last 3 libraries that have been built in the city of Chicago have been built as part of mixed-use developments, and they've been thriving.
Resident Jasmine Pisano questions why the community can't have both, a multi-use affordable housing development and a standalone library.
When people are coming to you with solutions, why is it so hard to believe that these are real concerns? Why is it so hard to believe that we need to safeguard the neutrality of a standalone library?
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Joanna Hernandez.
And we reached out to Patrick Malloy, the Director of Government and Public Affairs for the Chicago Public Library. In a statement, he says the city hosted a variety of community meetings and workshops that produced more than 300 responses with ideas. He did not say when the community can expect a finalized plan on the library's location. Paris.
Brandis, a recent watchdog report finds city officials could and should have prevented a botched smokestack implosion in Little Village. It's rekindling conversations about the role of industry in Chicago neighborhoods and where accountability lies when violations like this happen. And joining us are Howard Lerner, Executive Director of the Environmental Law and Policy Center, Kim Wasserman, Executive Director of the Little Village Environmental Justice Organization. And we also invited the Chicago Department of Public Health, but they issued a statement to us instead that called the implosion, quote, an unacceptable event. And it went on to say contractor negligence and failures led to that dust cloud that created fear and trauma in Little Village. This administration took swift public action to hold those responsible accountable. Since that time, the city has significantly enhanced efforts to protect communities from environmental harm, and you can read their full statement on our website. And we do thank the 2 of you for being here. Howard Lerner, when you saw the report about the report, because this report is under wraps, but we did get an advance copy of it, what was your reaction?
Well, this is a community health tragedy that could have been avoided. And what the report says is city officials didn't do what they should have done. The permitting process didn't work right. The result of that was community residents had clouds of dust and soot. They weren't given proper notice. Health impacts occurred. The contractors apparently didn't do what they wanted to do. They've been fined. They've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars of fine. The right people need to be held accountable here who didn't do their jobs right.
And
more
that includes
important,
folks in the city.
In the city and the contractors. And the most importantly, we can't run the Wayback Machine and undo what happened, but we need to figure out really what happened. The public needs to know. That should be transparent. And the lessons learned, things should be fixed within the system so this doesn't happen again in Little Village or any other community in Chicago.
Speaking of the Wayback Machine, Kim Wasserman, take us back to that day. What was that experience like for the residents, and what are the impacts in Little Village to this day?
Thank you for that question, and I can say that this report definitely has taken many of us back to that day, unfortunately, and it's a reminder of exactly what we knew, which is that the system is not built to protect communities like ours. That what was more important was this company being able to move forward and move their project forward than the protection of our health as a community. I'm currently sitting at finishing up a community meeting here in our offices today in which folks are talking about how this is re-traumatizing to them, how it's a reminder of environmental racism in Chicago still being very real, and our communities of color, low-income communities, still being sacrifice zones, not just for systems that don't work, but for staffers that are choosing to not do their job properly.
Howard Lerner, you mentioned the fines that Hilco and the contractor paid. No real repercussions at the city level. from a legal standpoint, is there more that can and should be done to hold these folks accountable?
You know, while you've reported on the Inspector General's report, it hasn't been released. And it should be released. The public's entitled to that sort of transparency. We ought to know exactly what happened, who did what, who's responsible, and get the lessons learned from this so the system gets fixed. You know, more importantly than whatever actions are taken at specific individuals is making sure this doesn't happen again. The fact of the matter is the city of Chicago has demolitions that occur, you know, every year. It happens in a lot of communities, Little Village and elsewhere. And this system broke down. That's pretty clear from the report, as you've been reporting it. And that's got to get fixed. And that means everybody needs to know what happened, and then what are the steps that have been taken to fix it so we don't get into that again. Accountability and make it fixed, improve it for the future, so that the public gets the sort of protections that the public should get, especially in environmental justice communities.
And Kim Wasserman, I mean, this has been a fight for your organization, your community for a long time because of all the industry around there. And let's remind our viewers, it was imploded to make way for a giant trucking warehouse facility. So tell us what's there now, and are things better in the community environmentally as a result?
Unfortunately, no. Right now, we are housing one of the largest warehouses in the city of Chicago with hundreds of trucks for a Target warehouse coming in and out. And so we have literally replaced the coal burning emissions, the coal burning power plant emissions with diesel truck emissions in our community. And still, no answers on what was in the dust plume, no answers on what was left residually in our soil, no kind of conversation on testing or cleanup in our communities since the implosion. And I think it's a direct, it shows you, to our opinion, that the system with this administration and without community input cannot be fixed, because we're still being sacrificed under the name of industrial profit. We're still looked at as a sacrifice zone. Our people are still expendable to the city of Chicago, and we're concerned that the Chicago Department of Public Health and the city of Chicago and our mayor are saying to us, oh, but things have been fixed. How have they been fixed? What role has our community played in them being fixed? How can we ensure that replacing staffers with different staffers isn't going to, the same thing isn't going to happen again? And so I appreciate Howard using the term accountability, and I'll throw another one, transparency. This administration has talked a lot about that, but has very little done to show that those are things that can actually happen. And I'll make the connection to, this isn't just the question of environmental racism and folks' voice being left out. You can look at our schools and schools being shut down. You can look at mental health clinics and those being shut down. You can look at the policing budget. Time and time again, we are seeing this administration claim accountability and transparency, but turning a blind eye to the very clear demands of what the residents of Chicago want, which is true accountability and transparency. And so the fight continues.
This is an ongoing discussion we'll continue to have. Howard Lerner, Kim Wasserman, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good to join you.
And up next, our Spotlight Politics team and the latest candidate for Chicago mayor to be hit with attacks. But first, we take a look at the weather.
Less than 2 weeks to go before Election Day, and the race for mayor is getting pointed. That and much more in tonight's Spotlight Politics. Joining us is the Spotlight Politics team, of course, Paris Schutz, Heather Sharon, and Amanda. Amanda's joining us from Springfield. Guys, less than 2 weeks?
I think so.
Okay, so as early voting has
opened... It's going to feel like a lot more than that.
It's been a long 2 weeks. First tonight, as early voting opens citywide, the mayoral candidates go after Brandon Johnson. Take a look at their final debate.
So I'm aware of Alderwoman Dow's endorsement of Brandon Johnson, and I can only think that she agrees with him that almost $1 billion in new taxes on top of the people of the city who working people, not just taxing the rich.
For Brandon Johnson to act like he's the only black person on the stage, he shouldn't answer the question. Black people need to get these contracts.
All right, says candidate Jamal Green there. Heather, Johnson says the other candidates are kicking him because he's out front. What's going on here?
Well, there's no doubt that this represents a shift in strategy by Lori Lightfoot. As late January, she was telling groups of people that Brandon Johnson, bless his heart, was not going to be Chicago's next mayor. If you are not worried about Brandon Johnson, you do not attack him the way that she has. So he has clearly and steadily risen in the polls, and the question is, can he peak at the right time and get into what we all assume will be a runoff. And if he does make it into the runoff, who is he running against? He has what seems to be a bit of momentum right now, along with Paul Vallas, who's really sort of consolidated those conservative voters. That could knock Lori Lightfoot and Jesus Chuy Garcia, out of the runoff.
Paris, let's talk about the money and the dark money in the race being spent on behalf of Mayor Lightfoot, Brandon Johnson, and Paul Vallas. Hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent from donors who are anonymous. It's legal, but should it concern voters?
Probably, and these are these independent expenditure groups that are all over the country in national races and local races, as you mentioned, supporting Lightfoot, one supporting Vallas, one supporting Garcia. In the case of Lightfoot, they are actually making those donors known, and as Heather reported the other day, one of those donors got a pretty lucrative deal from the CTA. So the reason that these independent expenditure groups are like this is to skirt these rules where folks doing business with the city, they're not supposed to be donating to those politicians. This is a way to get around that. These groups are not supposed to coordinate with the campaign, but if you look at their messaging, it's very similar to the campaigns that they're supporting.
Full watchdog report, which we know Mayor Lori Lightfoot has tried to squash, was leaked about the botched Lake Village smokestack implosion. Heather, is this going to be our February surprise, so to speak, in the mayor's race? Or maybe it is Vallas's residency controversy? Both stories you broke this week.
With Paris. So that's a good question, and it's hard to know what's going to resonate with voters and how that's going to shape those decisions that they're making. What's important to know is that we are seeing really a lot of early voting, a lot of voting by mail, so it's hard to know when people are making their decisions and sort of, what they're basing it on. But this Hillco report was completed 500 days ago. The mayors refused to release it, and now we really know why, because it does not paint a very flattering picture at all of how her administration handled this demolition and sort of why they allowed it to go forward.
And you just wonder, if they'd have just released this full report a year ago, probably wouldn't be talking about it in the campaign right now.
And didn't council members support releasing the report?
Yes, unanimously. They demanded that the mayor released it back in July. If she had released it back in July, sort of using that as cover, we wouldn't be talking about it today on February 15th. I believe it is February 15th. I've lost
Sources
all.
Say.
Yes,
the day after Valentine's Day.
Sources say it's February 15th. Let's get to Springfield. Governor J.B. Pritzker gave his combined State of the State and budget address today. Take a look at his focus on early education.
The research is clear. Smart Start Illinois will save taxpayers $7 for every $1 invested and will vault Illinois to national leadership in early childhood development.
So, Amanda, we know that early education has been one of J.B. Pritzker's top issues, top priorities, even before he ran for the governor's office. But vaulting the state to national leadership, is this about, campaign promises or something national, like presidential, perhaps?
Sure. I mean, I think they can both be true at the same time. Certainly, this is something that, by the way, Pritzker isn't alone in wanting to do. You have had a lot of attention toward this from Illinois advocates. In fact, this was something that was promised a while ago, back when, remember, Governor Rod Blagojevich, he signed a law that was supposed to bring preschool for all in Illinois. This has been something that's widely recognized per research as paying dividends down the line. By the way, though, there's a lot of programs that do just that, would pay money if you can invest in them. And the question is, where does that money come from and at what expense for other things? But this is something that even the GOP has signaled common ground and, yes, is sure to bring headlines to the governor.
Okay, Paris, we've got about 15 seconds. Governor says there are surpluses, but how's Illinois doing overall in unfunded or underfunded pension plans?
Well, yeah, the pension crisis is still there. I mean, I think I saw the governor's own statistics saying the combined collective pensions went from 43% to 44%, so they're 1% more funded now, which is a pretty big deal considering the fact that they were getting less and less and less funded throughout the years.
Something that Republicans will still use. That is Spotlight Politics. Paris shuts who? Amanda Vinicky and Heather Sharon. Thanks, gang. And as we mentioned, the Chicago municipal election is less than 2 weeks away, folks. So don't forget to visit our WTTW News voter guide, which offers candidate profiles and responses to localized candidate questionnaires and, of course, links to our ongoing political coverage. It's all at WTTW.com/voter-guide. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
that's our show for this Wednesday night. Please join us tomorrow night live at 10. Why some Evanston residents say they still oppose the new Northwestern football stadium in their community.
And which guns are covered by Illinois' assault weapons law? Our Amanda Vinicky takes a deep dive into the controversial legislation. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman.
And I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to be a multilingual law firm that provides translators for a variety of languages.
On the next Pioneers of Television,
welcome, Dana.
Crime dramas. From the early days of Dragnet.
You either come up with a solid story we can check on, or you're going to be resting your back in Maine jail.
To characters we loved watching every week on Pioneers of Television.
Thursday at 7 on WTTW.
Next time.
Should be a nice relaxing weekend. Let's hope so.
When Father Brown goes to a holiday camp,
Rise and shine.
the proprietor is murdered.
She's been strangled. I'm well aware of that. Thank you.
Father Brown.
Thursday at 8 on WTTW.
Next time on Shakespeare and Hathaway, a man is worried his daughter will ruin her sister's wedding.
She's fallen in with a group of environmentalists.
But even as Frank stands guard, the bride and groom go missing.
They've been kidnapped.
Shakespeare and Hathaway,